This sentence is extremely short. It's 2 words, the unlucky. Now, even though it's such a small sentence, it's still important to analyze this sentence and try to understand what the author was thinking when they included this sentence as the next sentence following the very descriptive one in longer sentence that we just read. So, the unlucky. This sentence is a descriptor. So, the author is saying the unlucky, the animals that are being drained of their blood and hung and picked apart by these savage vultures are the unlucky. So, this choice of words, choosing the word unlucky, choosing the word unlucky is telling us the perspective of Archie or the author. This word is telling us that the author or Archie, from whatever perspective that the text is taking, whether it's first person, Archie's perspective, or if it's the perspective, third person omniscient. But in this case, in this book, it is from the perspective of Archie, so it is first person. Archie sees these people as unlucky, so it's telling us an opinion, Archie's opinion or feelings towards what was shown above, towards the animals that are being bled and picked apart by the animals. So he views them as unlucky. But another interesting thing to consider is why the author used a capital U in unlucky. Unlucky is not a proper noun. It doesn't need to be capitalized. But that also will tell us something else. Maybe this is a reference to something else. What does the unlucky mean? Does it just mean that they're not lucky? Or is it a more general or specific categorization that Archie knows? Maybe his past experiences will show us that he categorizes all things under unlucky. And if you're an unlucky, you're receiving a punishment that is not deserved, or it can be interpreted in various ways, but it's important to analyze why or at least reflect on why you think the author might have capitalized that you, even though it's not necessary. All right, so that's the end of analyzing this sentence because it's very short. So let's come up with a hashtag, which will be very easy. We can just say hashtag unlucky with a capital, of course. And we will know exactly what that sentence is saying to us. All right, on to the next one. Can I scroll? Perfect. Okay. So this sentence is the next sentence, and we're going to read it first. These pigeons had an instinct for the unlucky, and so they passed Archie by. For though he did not know it, and despite the Hoover tube that lay on the passenger seat pumping from the exhaust pipe into his lungs, luck was with him that morning. Interesting. So the first thing I do is go and highlight things that are standing out to me as either literary devices or something important that I need to note. So first, I see that repetitive use of the capitalized unlucky, and I'm also noting this pigeons. And also, okay, so they passed Archie by. Another thing I'm noticing are words that I don't know or I'm not familiar with. I'm definitely not sure what a Hoover tube is, so I want to circle that. And then the last thing that I noticed that I want to highlight is this last part of the sentence. Luck was with him that morning. Okay, now we must go into the more detailed analysis of this sentence. So, these pigeons. This is extremely informative that the author notes pigeons. So the author is telling us, right, in this first part of the sentence, that this author is telling us that those birds, those vermin that he mentioned earlier, these vermin are pigeons. Now, I don't know about you, but I did not think that these disgusting vermin flying beasts would be pigeons. But that helps us, first of all, get information about what he's actually seeing, what Archie's actually seeing, but it's also telling us about his perspective or interpretation, if you will. So he's watching these birds, but anyone else would say pigeons. They wouldn't describe pigeons as these flying vermin that are picking apart dead. I would never have thought that. So this gives us a little insight into how Archie's mind works and how he thinks. All right, so had instinct for the unlucky. So here again is that unlucky that was mentioned earlier. So we have instinct for the unlucky. Although we still haven't determined exactly what this capital unlucky means to Archie, it's important to, again, reflect on this. They have an instinct for the unlucky. Okay, and so they passed Archie by. So this is telling us that Archie does not consider himself an unlucky. Whatever an unlucky may be, he does not consider himself one of them. So it's important for us to then just recognize that. Although we're not 100% sure what this unlucky means, Archie has the belief that they have an instinct to recognize these people or animals or whatever who have become part of the unlucky, and Archie does not consider himself one of the unlucky. This is 2 sentences. Fun. Whoops, okay, well, we're going to analyze 2 sentences now. For though he did not know it, and despite the Hoover tube that lay on the passenger seat, pumping from the exhaust pipe into his lungs, Luck was with him that morning. Okay, so this is also important. Let me get a new color. So here we are. He did not know it. So this tells us that Archie is not omniscient. He does not know everything. Some things he does not know. However, this sentence, the second sentence, is more of, I would say, the narrative part of it, if you will, because he's saying, although he did not know it, and that's going to tell us something. So although he did not know it, and despite the Hoover tube that lay on the passenger seat pumping the exhaust pipe into his lungs, Luck was with him that morning. So although he did not know it, and then it goes to this, Luck was with him that morning. So that tells us, since we can go, let's go through this real quick. I don't want to go too fast. So this comma right here, right? And then this comma right after the lungs, this tells us that this clause right here, let me highlight it real quick. Should probably put it in a different color. Green. And okay, so this sentence, and despite this sentence could be removable. It is describing, it's a descriptor. For example, we could say, for though he did not know it, Luck was with him that morning. The author could have said that, but the author chose to give us this extra information. The author decided that this green sentence right here was important for the readers to know. And as the reader, it is our responsibility to then determine why. Why did the author think it was important that we know this sentence? Well, the first thing we might need to figure out is what Hoover tube means. So we might have to research what Hoover tube means, because if we aren't sure about that, we might not know exactly what the importance of this clause is. So real quick, Hoover tube, let's look it up. A Hoover tube. All right, so from my research of Hoover tube, I have come to the conclusion that a Hoover tube is similar to that of a vacuum, a Brander type of vacuum. We also probably could have determined what a Hoover tube is by using the context, but since we have the availability to research it, it's better to research it. But if we wanted to discover what this might be, we could look at the rest of it. So it's laying on the passenger seat, so he's in a car. He must be, if he's on the passenger seat, he must be in the driver's seat, or in the back seat, or in the trunk. But for the sake of this argument, let's say he's in the driver's seat, since no one else has been mentioned that is driving or that he's moving. So in the passenger seat, he has this Hoover tube, which we don't know what it is, but we could know that we know what a tube is. So maybe, and Hoover is capitalized, so it could be a pronoun or brand. So moving on to, it's pumping, so what pumps? What is something that pumps? That's something to consider. I would always think of tire pressure or like a tire pump, but it's pumping something. So what is it pumping? It's pumping something from the exhaust pipe. It is pumping something from the exhaust pipe. It doesn't say what it's pumping, but it says it is pumping from the exhaust pipe, then into his lungs. So we know that if we know that an exhaust pipe releases exhaust fumes, and we might know that the fumes that come from a car are not good for us to inhale and are potentially could harm us or kill us. So now we know that there are being fumes. So from this, there's the pumping of exhaust fumes into his lungs that we know from prior knowledge are harmful. Additionally, now that we know that the Hoover tube may be a type of vacuum, and that's what's pumping the air from the exhaust into his lungs, this can be interpreted as, okay, despite, another important word, despite, this word here, despite, the Hoover tube that lay in the passenger seat pumping from the exhaust pipe into his lungs, despite that this is happening, which didn't happen, it could have happened just naturally, but with the presence of the vacuum, it seems as though this might be something that he put in place on purpose. If it had said that the smell, or he was inhaling the exhaust fumes, maybe then it wouldn't be as purposeful, but since it is telling us that there's a Hoover tube that is set up that is pumping the exhaust from the exhaust pipe into his lungs, we think this is an intentional act or something that he had done to himself, or is doing to himself currently. So he's possibly trying to harm himself. So it's saying, the sentence is saying, though, considering this despite this, Luck was on his side, or was with him that morning. So now, this word morning, this tells us part of the setting or time that this is taking place. So that's informative for us, and it's important to be able to take those out of the text because it will help us better understand what's going on. So it's morning. We know pigeons are attacking these bloody animals from a butcher shop, and they're picking it apart, watching it bleed, and they're splattering purple blood all over the white walls, and Archie is in a car, supposedly or probably, most likely in the driver's seat, and he has a vacuum that is somehow connected to his car and is pumping exhaust and dangerous fumes into his breathing space that he's then inhaling. And it's saying despite that he's trying to harm himself, he's lucky. Now, we could then consider, we could ask the question, how does this luck reference back to this concept of the unlucky? We already know that Archie doesn't consider himself part of this group of the unlucky, but this is saying something different. This, first of all, isn't capital, and is saying that luck was with him that morning. Now, we don't know why, unless the reason that he's saying luck is with him is because the pigeons passed him by, but in order to be sure, we need to keep reading. So before we end these two sentences, we're going to give them just one summary hashtag. So I'm thinking that the hashtag should be luck of pigeons. Now, I chose this hashtag because it emphasizes the question I still have, which is, why is he saying that luck is with him? What does that mean? What does this luck mean? Is it having to do with the unlucky, which is mentioned above? And also I put pigeons in there because these two sentences did give us a lot of informative information about both about Archie and about the setting or plot of the story. We know that it's morning. We know that the flying vermin are pigeons. And we know that Archie is doing something that might be harmful to himself. He is participating in some harmful behavior. We don't know why yet, but we have those questions that hopefully will be answered in the next couple sentences. Okay, on to the next sentence.